This presentation is designed to help you balance hormones if you're experiencing bad PMS or a number of perimenopausal symptoms. My name is Joan Maloney. I'm a nutritional therapist practicing in Dublin. I run a company called justweight.ie and I help men and women to lose weight. Hormonal health has an impact on weight, hence my interest in this area. So today I'm going to discuss four things: the dance of hormones and neurotransmitters, the menstrual cycle and how it changes with age, the top 4 hormone disruptors, and then I'll briefly do a summary, giving people the steps that they can take to help to balance hormones. Now, we have a number of hormones throughout our body, and they really do control how we live. The master hormone center really is the brain, the hypothalamus, and that then sends signals to the different parts of our body. So our thyroid will control our metabolism, the rate at which we burn calories. The likes of our adrenal glands will allow us to cope with different stressors in our life. The brain and the stomach will communicate to one another about our appetite. And the likes of the ovaries are involved with fertility and reproduction. These are intrinsically linked to our neurotransmitters, and the one that I find most interesting is serotonin. So neurotransmitters are always considered to be brain hormones, but I find it interesting that you find almost all of the neurotransmitters in the brain also in the stomach, which is why the stomach is referred to as the second gut. Now, in perimenopause, when estrogen levels decline, that seems to have a great impact on serotonin. And if you look to the right of this slide, you'll see that serotonin is responsible for regulating our sleep, sex drive, mood, appetite, digestion, body temperature, and sensitivity to pain. And that might help to explain all the different symptoms that we can experience in perimenopause. So transmitters and hormones are intrinsically linked. Now let's look at the menstrual cycle. First of all, a brief description of it. So from the very first time we get a period, we will get a menstrual cycle once a month. And it has 2 phases to it. The follicular phase, days 0 to 14. Then you ovulate, and then the luteal phase, and then you get to the end of your cycle when the womb is shed. So starting at the beginning again, the follicular phase is where the brain is telling the eggs to grow in size. And you can see there that the green hormone, the FSH, follicle stimulating hormone, is increasing. And then you'll see the sharp increase in and around day 14, and that's when you're ovulating. So when the egg is released, what's left is the corpus luteum. And the corpus luteum then releases progesterone, and the progesterone is what encourages the womb to line itself with blood, so that if the sperm and the egg fertilize, the womb will be ready to be the home for the fetus. If the sperm and egg don't fertilize, the womb is shed, and that's where you get the bleeding with the menstrual cycle. So the length of the menstrual cycle can vary from person to person. But the key thing is that it's those fluctuations that cause the PMS symptoms. So it's the movement, the sharp increase and the sharp drop of estrogen or progesterone that cause the PMS symptoms that I've listed here. Now, you won't experience all of those, but all women will experience some of them. And what I hear a lot, because I'm working with women who are looking to lose weight, is this is the time when you can experience sweet cravings, and you can also get a collection of fluid at that time, which makes you think that you've put on weight. You can get a change in your appetite at that time and disrupted sleep. And of course, these are all really disruptive when it comes to being in the middle or even at the beginning of a weight loss program. So please disregard any weight gain during the menstrual cycle. Now, women are born with their full supply of eggs, but there are lifestyle factors like smoking and drinking, recreational drugs, and a bad diet that can affect the quality of the eggs. Epigenetics is an area of science. It's absolutely fascinating. And it is, if you're looking to improve the quality of your eggs, that's an area that I would suggest you do a little bit more study in. Men produce new sperm all the time, and most definitively, if they lose weight, get fit, reduce the likes of smoking and drinking, and improve their diet, they will increase and improve. They'll improve the quality and the motility of their sperm. So starting from the age of 10 or 11, or whenever you have your first menstrual cycle, to the age of 35, That's your most fertile period, but after that, fertility pretty much falls off a cliff, or so we're told. There are 4 types of PMS, and you can see there I've broken them up because they seem to affect different hormones or neurotransmitters. So the one that I want to highlight is PMSH, and that's where aldosterone, it interacts with the kidneys in terms of fluid regulation. So that's where you may experience a weight gain of up to 4 pounds in a week. And I mean, that's just temporary weight. So do not let that disrupt your weight loss program. And here's a lovely graphic that explains sort of the declining levels of hormone as we age. So we've discussed the first, the green one, the premenopause. The perimenopause is where your periods become a little bit more irregular. You mightn't have a period every month, and it might be lighter or it might be heavier. And then you can have a plethora of symptoms that occur at this time of life. So sort of mid to late 40s into your 50s, and it can start earlier, and some people go into early menopause, in and around their 30s. So I suppose the comforting thing is that you won't experience all of these symptoms, and it really does vary. So I will see clients who get the anxiety, but then other clients will get sort of the muscle and the joint ache. And why I've listed all of them is it's nice to be able to connect them all as being influenced by hormonal change, because otherwise you might think that you're going crazy. So if you can do anything you can to try and improve the balance of your sex hormones going through this phase, well, it will certainly help to reduce and sometimes eliminate some of these symptoms. The 4 key things we're going to talk about, right, are stress, diet, toxins, and xenoestrogen. I'm going to take each one of these individually. Sex hormones and stress hormones are produced on the same biochemical pathway. They use cholesterol as their base substance. This is what the body does. It builds things and it uses a base substance. Now, what's interesting here, more so linked with diet, is that you get more cholesterol when you have a high intake of sugar. So look to the left there, you can see glucose. Glucose, using the B vitamins and magnesium, it's converted to pyruvate and acetyl-CoA, but acetate is the compound from which cholesterol is made. So a high sugar diet will add more cholesterol to your body. Then when you look at cholesterol and look at what's built on from the cholesterol as a core, well, your progesterone is made from it, your cortisol is made from it, testosterone is, and estrogen is. But the issue is that when you are highly stressed, the body will prioritize the production of cortisol, possibly to the detriment of progesterone. So on that chemical pathway, there is a shunt from pregnenolone to 17-hydroxypregnenolone to produce more cortisol rather than progesterone. So that's one source of imbalance, and that's directly caused by stress, and that's something that you can learn to manage better. That alone will help to balance your estrogen and your progesterone. Now, if you follow on from the cortisol, so if you're highly stressed and you have a lot of cortisol floating around the blood, one of the things that cortisol does is it releases a lot of your stored fats, and it asks for more sugar to be put into your bloodstream. It asks the liver to do that. And of course, when you have more sugar in your bloodstream, your insulin levels rise. And that's an evolutionary response. It's the flight or fight response, which you will have heard being discussed on the radio and on blogs, etc. As the second thing about stress is that stress actually inevitably leads to high insulin, and insulin will reduce the production of a thing called sex hormone binding globulin. Now, what is that? Well, because our sex hormones and our stress hormones are fat-based, they have to be carried on things in our blood because fat and water don't mix. And these globulins, there's 3 of them I'm going to discuss here: sex hormone binding globulin, cortisol binding globulin, and albumin. Now, when the hormones are bound to them, they're inactive. But when they're free, when they're unbound, they can penetrate any cell. So the ratio of bound to unbound hormone has a great effect on your health. Let's look at the sex hormone binding globulin, which we said is reduced if you're stressed. Sex hormone binding globulin carries 3 hormones: estrogen, testosterone, and DHEA, but it favors testosterone. So that means that it's leaving more estrogen free in the bloodstream to engage with anything. Okay, if you've got too much estrogen, that can result in irregular periods, mood swings, bloating, and breast tenderness. And we know from the last slide that we looked at, if you're highly stressed, you're going to have possibly less progesterone than you need. So with too much estrogen and less progesterone, you may become estrogen dominant. Now look at the symptoms for that: weight gain, decreased sex drive, mood swings, depression, bad PMS, irregular menstrual cycle, heavy bleeding, breast tenderness, fibrocystic breast disease, fibroids in the womb, gallbladder problems. Okay, so that just comes from a high sugar diet and from high stress, leading to high insulin, which reduces the SHBG, which allows more estrogen to be free in the blood, and the stress itself may compromise the amount of progesterone that you have. Look at the cortisol binding globulin. So that carries cortisol and it carries progesterone, but it favors cortisol. So when your stress levels are high, progesterone may not be carried to where it needs to be carried. So if you have too little progesterone, that can cause miscarriage, headache, mood change, irregular period. And if you've too much testosterone, as in if just the overall levels of SHBG are low, too much testosterone, weight gain, extra facial hair, acne, mood change, menstrual changes, and infertility. So the key takeaway from here, the key step in order to help to rebalance your hormones would be to manage your stress and, start a healthy eating lifestyle. Now let's look at diet. Well, there's two phases here. If anybody is listening and they want to get pregnant, you have to avoid being underweight because you need enough cholesterol to make your sex hormone. But at the same time, you have to avoid being overweight because if there's too much cholesterol in the body, that can give too much substrate to make more stress and sex hormone. Also, to get pregnant, bottom line here really, there's no special foods. You just have to be well nutritioned. And I would recommend supplementing. There's good supplements out there now just to cover off all eventualities. And that applies to both men and women because it takes a man and a woman to make a baby. To help balance hormones, a couple of points here. The first one is eat in moderation and stay lean, mainly because estrogen is stored in your fat cells. Now that's useful in your later years when you don't have a lot of estrogen. Remember the graph where you could see the hormone levels declining. But you don't want excess estrogen in your earlier years. So excess sugar and fats, they spike your insulin and they down-regulate the transporters. We dealt with that. So a moderate to low carb diet would be very effective to help to balance hormones. Hormones and neurotransmitters, when they're traveling around to cells, how they communicate with the cell is through the cell wall. And the cell wall is made up of fats. So in a cell wall, you'll have cholesterol, omega-3, 6, 9, phospholipids, and saturated fats. But if the diet is a main source of saturated fats like animal fats, so the fat off a rasher or a fatty type of meat or a lot of butter or a lot of dairy, a lot of cheese, so mainly saturated fats, these will stiffen your cell wall and they'll reduce the sensitivity of the cell wall to the hormone that's trying to communicate a message through it. You will also need a high antioxidant diet to protect the cell wall. You don't want the cell wall getting damaged. Your primary antioxidants are vitamin A, C, E, and D. And then you have other key ones like selenium, zinc, copper, magnesium, and manganese. And plant chemicals like flavonoids and carotenoids. Now, how do you put that into a visual for people? As you say, you eat as wide a variety of food as possible, but half of your dinner plate and your lunch plate needs to be vegetables with an addition of fruit, we'll say, at breakfast. And make sure that you have all the colours of the rainbow on your plate. And in that way, that could be a high antioxidant diet. I would supplement vitamin D between the months of October to May in Ireland because we don't get enough sunlight. And then the likes of your vitamin A and your E are fat-soluble nutrients. And you'll get them from the likes of nuts and seeds and dairy. And the vitamin C you'll get from fresh fruit and vegetables. Now, thirdly, estrogen has to be detoxified by the liver. Two pathways, sulfation and glucuronidation. And if you have an imbalanced gut bacteria, certain gut bacteria, they can deconjugate the estrogen. So it can allow it to be recirculated from the gut back into the bloodstream. So feed your gut bacteria good prebiotics, and you could prophylactically take a probiotic just to keep the gut healthy, especially after a holiday or the likes of a Christmas holiday where you or a summer holiday where you may be not eating as well as you would normally eat. High fiber also helps to excrete cholesterol. That's another way of getting excess cholesterol out of the body. So fiber at about 30 grams plus per day. Fourthly, Pesticides, insecticides, additives, and preservatives, they are a burden on the liver. Now, if you buy your food from within the EU, you'll be buying a safer, I suppose, a safer list of pesticides and insecticides because many of them have been banned, but we don't know what countries outside the EU are spraying on their vegetables and their fruit and their grains. If a product that you're buying has a very long shelf life, you can be guaranteed it has a higher content of preservatives. So the length of the shelf life is defined by how much preservatives are added to it. That's how they get their date for it. So buy organic vegetables in as much as you can. Buy good quality meat. No meats are hormonally treated as far as I know here in Ireland, but so make sure you buy Irish product. Get free range for the likes of chicken and that, and buy short shelf life, in other words, fresh produce. And then fifthly, water. You could test the water in your area if you're moving into a new area because we do encourage 2 litres of water plus a day. So that's a lot of liquid to be putting into our body. And I use a filter jug to filter my water. It's not 100% effective. It doesn't remove all of the things that may be in water. So for people that I work with, I actually give them this diet in numbers so that they can't actually go wrong. And for a typical female to maintain weight, this is not weight loss now, this is the maintenance phase, they would have a direction to eat 1800 to 2000 calories a day, eating 1 gram per their ideal body weight. So if their ideal body weight is 70 kilo, I would be encouraging them to have 70 gram of protein per day. Carbs in and around 90 to 200 gram a day. So they go much lower on the weight loss phase. So then by the time they get into weight maintenance, 90 to 200 gram of carb per day is a party. So, and you would vary that according to your scale weight. You'd adjust that and find a level at which you could maintain. Fat at about the 100 gram per day, favoring plant fats over animal fats, and then fiber at 30 gram plus per day if you can tolerate it, as long as you don't have the likes of IBS in that. Moving on to toxins, the key thing here is if your liver is healthy, that should, in theory, help to keep you hormonally well. The liver makes your cholesterol, it detoxifies your estrogen, keeping in mind that 80% of breast cancers are estrogen receptor positive. But the liver also detoxifies a number of other things, and I want to highlight alcohol. So if you burden the liver with alcohol, you really are asking it to do a lot when it has to look after estrogen and all of the other things that have to pass through it. And the liver also metabolizes all your food. So it'll convert whatever you're eating into energy, convert glucose to fat, convert fat to phospholipids, and it will manage your cholesterol levels for you. When it's overburdened, you'll tend to get results back from your doctor, which will either show that you've got your liver enzymes are raised, and I've put them there in the slide so that you can look for them in your results, or you might get a low SHBG, which can be a marker of a poorly functioning liver. The body produces sulfur, and once estrogen is sulfated, remember I said there was 2 pathways to detoxify estrogen, sulfation and glucuronidation. Well, that's the second pathway, sulfur, and the sulfur that we eat in our food is poorly absorbed. So yes, we will get sulfur from eggs, Brazil nuts, garlic, onion, leek, and the cruciferous vegetables, but really we need our body to produce it. And in order to produce sulfur, you need to have enough protein. You need to be eating enough protein. B12, folate, B6, magnesium, potassium, iron, and molybdenum. A whole food diet will deliver all of the nutrients that you need. So keep the food on your plate varied, as I said earlier, and get loads of colours on the plate. The other thing to note here is that preservatives and additives, they are a source of sulfites. So you'll be familiar with the likes of sulfites being in wine, and a high level of sulfite can inhibit an enzyme called sulfur transferase, and this can affect the production of sulfur. So look out for that. Try and limit it. Check for the addition of sulfur dioxide in that as a preservative or an additive to foods that you're buying. So limit your alcohol. Do not overload the liver with processed foods or toxins. Then we're on to the final one, hormone disruptors. So what are they? You'll also hear them referred to as xenoestrogens. And you'll sort of see, if you look out for these terms, PCBs, PAs, and phthalates. They're the 3 sort of key families. They are chemicals, by and large. They're added to pretty much everything, to our homes, to our clothes, to our personal care products, to our cars. And you can't really avoid them, but you can certainly take certain steps to protect yourself. So if you can imagine, they have to get through your skin, which they do easily, and they can actually pass through the skin into breast milk and through the placenta into the womb. They So the key things to look out for: anything that you rub on your skin, try to buy as organic as possible. Anything that you put up against your skin, the like of clothes, that's where you'd be looking at wool and you'd be looking at cottons, and avoiding dyed clothes. So try to get natural fabrics. Stuff that you use in your house, if it is going to be strong, like a solvent or a fixative, use gloves. So just protect your skin, just like we're doing at the minute with masks and COVID. You can stop something from getting in. Now, the thing to know with phthalates is they have an affinity for fat. Same as our fat will store estrogen, our fat stores phthalates. So in obese people, in overweight people, you may have more toxins within the fat cells. So you have to be careful when you're losing weight to eat well and to drink to help to flush them out. But these phthalates can disrupt other hormones, so like your thyroid and your adrenal glands and your immunity and your neurotransmitters, because the brain is very fat-rich organ. So to summarize, the findings so far, so these are the steps that you would take to help to improve a really bad PMS or really bad and too many perimenopausal symptoms. The key one, I think, is stress management. If you can learn how to manage your stress, that will immediately help to balance your estrogen and progesterone. And that, of course, if you reduce the amount of sugar going into your diet, that's going to help to increase your sex hormone binding globulin. On the diet front for clients, continue what you're doing at the minute, right? And I've given all that education through my 8-week program. Liver, key thing, respect it. Be very, very careful around alcohol. The stronger the liver, the better chance you have. And finally, we are living in a toxic world, so it really is up to ourselves to educate ourselves. Look at the labels. What are we buying? Try to familiarize yourself with the likes of the phthalates, the PCBs and the PAHs. Just become familiar with where they are so that you can actually look out for them. And the best example of that is when bisphenol A, BPA, got headline news there not so long ago. All the plastic bottles and our coffee cups and our water bottles for the gym all heavily advertise the fact that they're now BPA free. So the manufacturers will respond to consumers. If we say we are not going to buy this because this is dangerous for our health, they will adapt. So let's just all of us try and educate ourselves a little bit more on this topic, but not become hypochondriacs where we feel that we can't do anything. That's it. I hope you find this helpful. If you have any questions, you can always get onto my website, justwait.ie, and there's a contact form there. Send me through any questions. Thank you very much for listening.